Morning, everybody. Welcome to Coffee and Cargo. I'm glad you all could make it today. We have some good topics that we're going to go over. So I know quite a bit of people are still joining in here. So I'll do some introductions, kind of go through our agenda, and then we'll get started. So my name is Rachel. I work in the marketing department. We have Emily Smith, who is our project manager, also works with me in the marketing department. Justin Engelmeyer, who is our vice president. And then we have Ben Schwingel, who is our international operations director. So Justin and Ben will lead the conversation and put their take on all these topics today. So to get started, we'll go through the agenda. We're going to recap the summer, kind of what's happened throughout the last few months. Rates have dropped and space has opened up pretty well. So we'll touch on how quickly those dropped, what we saw in the summer, and then we'll go into fall, what we expect fall is going to be like, touch on Golden Week that's coming up here and how to best prepare for holiday shutdowns as well. So that will be all within fall. And then we'll go into managing demurrage and detention. So kind of who's held accountable, how to avoid these fees, and maybe some things to consider when looking at your current situation. So we'll touch on that, and then we'll hit on some current events, and then we'll end with a live Q&A. So as you're listening today, if there's any questions, we do try to save time at the end to go through those. So you should see at the bottom of your screen a Q&A section. Put some questions in, and we'll get those answered to you as well. So Justin, Ben, I'll let you guys take it from here.
Perfect. Thanks, Rachel. So yeah, when we look at the past, obviously since the pandemic, rates have gone through the roof, and then what we've seen recently. And while the rates were going through the roof, it was because of the capacity and multiple different reasons over that. But rates were really, really high. And now rates have decreased so much. I mean, they're really getting close to where they were pre-pandemic. And capacity is not an issue any longer. It really isn't. We're able to get, for the most part, as much space as we want. And you know, there's not a lot of delays and stuff like that we were seeing before. So it's kind of normalized again. It's gone back to somewhat how it was before, but there are still a few things out there that we're looking at now we're going to talk about with the detention and demurrage and stuff like that. But Ben, what else are we seeing with the rates here? You know, I know it's volatile. It keeps going down. I feel like it's going to bounce up and down and kind of hum around the lower ranges that we're seeing right now. But what else are you thinking over this?
Yeah, we're in the classic peak season time period right now. So we were bracing ourselves for hitting the bottom and then seeing a slight rise already in September and through October, which hasn't happened. So this may be the first year in decades there hasn't been a peak season. The rate it's increasing, but that doesn't mean it won't still happen. As you mentioned, it put such a sharp plummet. Is going to find some equilibrium, probably at a higher place than we are right now, as the carriers still struggle to find what's their value to the industry. They know it's
that'll be interesting, Ben, to see when it actually happens, right? You know, the rates have plummeted. So does it hold out for a low period for the rest for 6 months right now? Does it bounce back up in a month? I mean, those are the questions that we don't know. And I feel like it's gone so far and it's dropped so much that it will rebound to something. Who knows where that is, if it's 15% higher than it is right now, or what that is, and who knows when. Those are really the questions of that no one has the answer to, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, and then, another thing that we're seeing right now. So I have had some customers say, hey, I can't get this stuff moved out of China or something like that. And realistically, when it comes down to it, it's the next thing that we have up here on the screen is the supply of the raw materials and stuff. It's the production issues. And I've seen that be an issue more often than, realistically being able to get containers moved out of somewhere. It's normally been a production issue when it gets down to it. It's someone being told by the supplier that they can't move something, but in all reality, it's just that the production isn't there at the moment. Are you seeing that?
Clients, yeah, export clients, they make generators, machinery like that. They're waiting on suppliers to provide the plastic caps or drain plugs, little components like that that were not being brought from a Chinese supplier to a Vietnamese supplier for assembly into a larger unit. And now it gets put into the generator in the United States. But it's that raw material to component manufacturer has resumed midsummer. So now we're seeing the component to finished product manufacturer catching up, and hopefully with some relief to our supply chain. Everyone listening, the whole industry has been going through a tough time the last couple of years. Perhaps we're in a period now where it's going to ease off.
Sure. And as we said before, our rates have come back down so much. And when you look at inflation and everything costs more, and right now the shipping's plummeted. So it's kind of the one thing that has gone down during this time where everything else has gone up at this moment. So we touched on it a little bit here for the expectations for the fall. And in all honesty, there's a lot of guesswork as to what's to come. What are your thoughts though, Ben? What are you hearing from your guys over your partners overseas and stuff?
I think the psychology has caught up with the reality. There's always a period of disbelief. But I think we're ready to go just like 2019 again. Finding those lowest costs, getting the space, the carriers on the best transit times to the ideal port of discharge for every customer. Now we have years of experience on how to react in case of the contingency and emergency plans, but I think optimist, that's the word I would use right now, and for continued normalcy in the shipping industry, that would be good. But in the back of our mind, we always have wondering what's happening with the global and the U.S. economy, what's going to happen with Russia and Ukraine later this fall and winter. I probably the first thing on my mind is, our fuel rates going to increase again for trucking in the United States. I think we could see that happen in the fall and winter.
And how are the trucking rates? What are you seeing as far as the domestic portion of the imported or exporting? How are those rates hanging on compared to the international?
Well, it certainly didn't drop like international shipping, but anyone that goes to the gas pumps has seen a slight reduction in cost. While we're still at all-time high numbers, which is just becoming new normal, as all prices in the United States have gone up.
Right, because it has a lot more. There's a lot more to it than just the fuel component of it. There's driver capacity in itself. There's finding drivers, which has always kind of been an issue, but it's not getting any better, or it hasn't gotten better. It doesn't seem so. So, yeah, I don't know if those rates are coming down soon, but they could.
Right, between trucker staffing and the fuel rates kind of hanging where they are, I don't expect sharp drops, but we are adjusting to this new normal.
Sure, absolutely. All right, Rachel, and next up, is it the Golden Week? Yeah, so this is, correct me if I'm wrong, Ben, this is just in China for Golden Week, and pretty much all the factories and stuff are going to be shut down there, and we're not going to be moving anything out during Golden Week. So what are some of the tips that you would have for our customers here as to what to do? Get something out before, after? What are your thoughts? What are your tips for that?
I'm realizing 10 days to go until Golden Week. This is normally when the airline's very busy and it's hard to get capacity, and they still operate through Golden Week. But there's a backlog of deliveries that have happened preceding that. Rates usually go up several dollars per kilogram, and that hasn't happened yet either. It's like the evaporated peak season. The air freight industry, despite iPhone's new release this month, did not drive costs up like it normally does. So still good news on the air freight front. Here coming to the end of the month, there's space, rates are normal, right? They're the same as they've been all month, but expect a serious delay for this next week, the first week of October. That'll be felt throughout the next 2 months as there's a blip on imports that are coming into the United States or through the seaports, rail lines and all that.
So your suggestion is try if you can get it out before, because after there's going to be a lot of congestion.
I would, yeah. I mean, if manufacturers can be pushed to produce it now, they will, and they'll load those containers, get them in the port. Otherwise, just be aware of these 7 days when you will not be able to get the workers to finish products.
Absolutely.
It's
All
just,
right.
I'm sorry, we did say it was just China though, right? I mean, this is just
Yes.
China specific.
Correct. Okay. All right, Rachel. And coming up next year, we're going to talk about demurrage and detention. So for those of you that don't know, demurrage is essentially what you're charged when your containers are stuck in the port and they're there for X amount of time after you have X amount of free days while your containers are at the port. Once it surpasses that, demurrage starts, you start getting charged demurrage. And then detention is what you're charged for after the container is pulled out of the terminal, and you only have so long before you have to bring it back to the terminal. And so if you exceed those amount of days, then you start paying detention on that here. And right now we're at an all-time high for both of these. So Ben, can you tell us a little bit about what we're seeing here and why this is such an issue at the moment? With there being so much more capacity and all this other stuff going on, why are we seeing such an uptick in demurrage and detention? And who's accountable for this?
That's a kind of a complicated question with a complex answer. Sir, I couldn't detail it all out in this webinar, but it has to do with all the driving forces around the container's arrival. You have the carrier, you have the terminal, you have the truckers, you have the chassis pools, you have the FMC looking at this since last year, because there were some egregiously high demurrage bills, thousands, tens of thousands of dollars being billed out to importers who simply couldn't get truckers to retrieve cargo from the ports last year. And while capacity is opened up and rates are dropping, we're still suffering through some of that congestion and the trucker shortages. Not just the West Coast. I'm not talking just Los Angeles, which is notorious. It's Savannah and New York still, sometimes Miami. There's times when it's hard to get a trucker in advance, or you have to scramble and find one. And your great freight forwarders will already have many truckers they're working with. And as the ship ETAs change, last day happens, and then finally arrives, you have to jockey your truckers around to get that container. But those importers that can't are suffering, and that's why these demurrage charges are still an all-time high.
And so, and what we're talking about down here is avoidance, and it says X works versus FOB, and so on. And so you're saying, touch on that a little bit here as to why one is different than the other for the demurrage and detention.
Yeah, how to avoid it is with control. The importer is going to be charged for demurrage detention if it's their import. So if it's X Works or FOB, even CFR and CIF, they're the ones that are responsible for taking control of getting it through the seaport and to their final destination. DAP would be an Incoterm where the shipper is responsible for that. So the shipper would incur the demurrage that might happen if the forwarder arranging the trucking at destination doesn't do a good job or can't get it out in time, or there's a documentation mishap, customs clearance isn't done quickly. So by taking control of the shipment from origin with X Works, or at least from the port of origin, FOB, that importer is signing their forwarder that they choose with the responsibility of getting it shipped across, customs cleared quickly, and a trucker assigned to move that container. And having all of that under control of the importer allows them to say, you are the accountable person, confirm, we're moving it through. We get an arrival notice a week before the container arrives. You can clear customs with that. You should have been assigning your trucker at least a week in advance and watching this container come in. And that's what a good freight forwarder does. Well, the best will have many truckers, as I just touched on. So when these changes happen last minute, best freight forwarders are shuffling their truckers around different containers to pull them, deliver them to the right place at the right time. But CFR is the tricky one. That's where your supplier, and let's just pick on Asia, is booking the cargo. And once it gets to the port of, pick on Los Angeles, it's out of their hands. It's whatever freight forwarder is assigned to receive it. They pass documents over to the importer, who passes it on to the customs broker or whoever they're doing trucking with. And that's where we see a lot of importers struggle with demurrage, because they didn't get the documents soon enough. They didn't keep passing them on to customs brokers to have, for customs clearance to happen quickly, to get a trucker assigned. By the time all that happens, cargo's arrived and they haven't found a trucker yet.
Sure. So yeah, it makes sense. If you are working with a forwarder and you're working closely with them throughout the entire process, then what we're saying is at the end here, you're a lot more likely to at least minimize some of these charges and some of the delays coming out of the port, versus if you aren't working with a forwarder and all of a sudden at the very end, a US forwarder gets involved with something, you know, they're not part of that entire process, and therefore you could have some more issues with this.
Yeah, issues with customs clearance too. You might not find out that perhaps it's missing HS codes, or it's just not clear documentation, and it's going to take longer to get through customs. That's all going to start running out the free time clock, right? The number of free days you have. Typically 5, sometimes 10 if it's negotiated for. Typically only 5 days after it's arrived.
Sure, makes sense. All right, Rachel, what you have next here?
Yes, we have some current events. I can touch on them quick. We do send out a recap email tomorrow giving more information on our current events. So make sure to look at your email and you'll see that come through soon. So FMC did propose a rule that they are going to prevent ocean carriers from locking out available vessel space to customers. So this is something that was published last week. So we'll see kind of what happens with that. We'll put some more information in the recap email. And if something does happen, we'll usually put updates on it in our newsletters. So take a look, watch out for that as well. And then last Friday, there was a potential strike that was going to happen as far as a rail strike. This has kind of been a 2-year thing happening between the unions and railroads with some certain negotiations, but they did come to an agreement on Friday, which did cancel the potential strike. So not everything has been released of what that agreement holds, but they did provide some information of what they did agree on. And Ben, do you want to quick touch on what they kind of came to an outcome?
Yeah, from what we've read, unions representing 60,000 employees, and I know a lot of eyes were on this tentative strike. Some people thought it was going to happen. I was feeling confident it wasn't, just because the presidential board was involved in soothing the negotiations, right? And ended up that over the next 5 years, rail workers will get 24% salary increases, and they're going to ease some of the restrictions on their unpaid time off for doctor visits. Just better working conditions overall, attract more people to the industry, and reward the rail workers that have been moving freight all across the country. Well, a dozen different rail networks that this represents.
Awesome, thanks. And more information again will be on our recap email tomorrow. But we'll go into our Q&A. So if there's any questions on topics or just general questions, get them in. We'll start answering some, and I'll let Emily take it over.
Sounds good. Thanks, Rachel. So a couple good questions coming in here. One of them is, how easy is it to switch Incoterms? Is that something that Interlog can assist with? Ben, Justin, kind of your thoughts on that?
Yeah, and by switch, you mean, again, I think we're going back to what Ben was touching on here, where the importer becomes in control versus having the supplier essentially pay for the shipping process and handle that. And I think in my experience, it's always been relatively easy, but there's a lot of uncertainty for the person buying the goods. If they haven't done the shipping, it's almost, since they haven't controlled it before, they can be a little nervous about it, but it's not. If you find the right forwarder and you pair together and they walk you through the process, it's really not that intimidating. It's a relatively simple switch. And then again, you just have a lot more control over it. You're able to control the flow of the documentation. You're able to see when the shipments are coming in a lot better. And you're able to work with someone that's going to be able to sit there with you and talk to you about your shipments and make sure that they're giving you the options that you need. I think a lot of people that let the suppliers handle the shipping for them, they might see an initial lower charge on the paper, but they're often not getting the best options, the best routing options. They're not getting then the best options for once it comes in for the trucker to handle it and such forth. So it's really one of those things that you have to find someone that you can work with and speak with, and that they can help you through it.
Yeah,
Perfect.
I want to touch on the tracking and tracing. Justin said too, is you have visibility. If your shipper is controlling everything and you just do the customs clearance or maybe the customs clearance and delivery, a lot of times you won't get the documentation for that shipment until it's arriving. So you weren't even aware of when it departed or how transit across the ocean is going, air freight too, for that matter. But we've had a lot of conversations with clients, especially the last year, as they've struggled to know where their cargo is. And by having a conversation all together with their suppliers, helping to switch to an FOB or Ex-Works Incoterm so that Interlog or someone like us is giving them visibility from the moment it's booked, when it departs, and all the way through.
Perfect. Sweet. Thanks for that. Those answers. Another good question came in asking about air freight rates, kind of what those are looking like right now and in the coming months.
Ben, we'll let you go with that one.
I think I kind of touched on it earlier, but maybe more about export rates too. Kind of globally speaking, air freight rates are like ocean freight rates back near the pre-pandemic levels. And we haven't seen any sharp increases before in holidays or in peak season yet. So if that trend is continuing, we're just going to see just steady, really reasonable air freight pricing through October and November. Probably with a little panic shipping, get the last minute products on the shelves and or maybe to the consumers, B2C around November 10th. It's usually when that takes off. Any other questions?
We'll actually end with this one. Just kind of what does Interlog do to ensure that their customers aren't getting hit with any avoidable charges?
Yeah, I think Ben can touch on that, but again, it's aligning everything up. And so you have to work with whomever your account manager is, or whomever is inside working on your shipment to make sure they have everything aligned from documentation. And then it's the forwarder's job for the trucker and make sure that they're working on that. Not to say that things don't fall through the cracks when those free days change and stuff. And Ben's talking about jockeying drivers and stuff. I mean, it is a hassle, but they should be working with them on that. Ben, do you have more to add to that, or?
Yeah, I think what you touched on it. To get into the specifics though, I invite anyone to have a conversation with us in detail or their freight forwarder to know how many containers and how many truckers and how many forwarders in their origin country are they working with? How many options do they have to work through? Because it's not just one all the way through. You're going to have options to choose from for the best service package.
Perfect. Well, oh, did you have anything else to add? Or?
No, that's good.
Perfect. All right, Rachel, if you want to wrap things up.
Awesome. Thanks, Emily. And I see there's still quite a few questions in there. So if you did leave your name, we'll reach out to you individually on those questions. But just some next coffee and cargo information. We will be hosting another one October 19th at 10 a.m. Central Time. If you are enjoying these and you want to just be automatically getting these requests and webinar invites, you can email myself at rachel@interlogusa.com. we'll get you on that list. You don't have to do it every month. And then again, if you have any questions from these topics, you can reach out to us through our sales email as well. But thank you all for coming. I hope you enjoyed it. Emily, Justin, Ben, it was a pleasure, and we'll see you guys next month.